Ever wonder how Italian fashion, I mean, like the whole made in Italy phenomenon really got its start?
It's a fascinating story, actually. A lot of people assume Milan is at the heart of it all.
Right. Milan, all those big names and runway shows.
But to truly get to the source, we need to rewind a bit, go back to Florence, specifically Florence in the 1950s.
Florence, okay.
And for this deep dive, we've got some incredible sources to dig into, firsthand accounts, historical analysis, really shedding light on how Italy, a nation rebuilding after World War II, basically transformed into this global fashion powerhouse.
So this is like a crash course in the birth of Made in Italy.
That's the idea. We're going to uncover the key players, the essential ingredients that fueled the success story.
I'm in. Like, Italian fashion, it's so iconic now, it's hard to imagine it ever not being a thing.
Exactly. But it all had to begin somewhere, and that somewhere was Florence in the 1950s. That's where the real magic started to come together.
Okay, so Florence, 1950s.
A time of immense change. A generation yearning to rebuild, to create something new.
In Italian style, it was like a perfect expression of that, right? The energy, the rebirth.
Precisely. And think of the big names that were emerging then. Salvatore, Ferragamo, Gucci.
Laying the groundwork for what would become huge global brands.
Absolutely. And a central figure in all of this was a man named Giovanni Battista Giorgini.
Okay, so who was this guy? Another designer.
He was actually a merchant specializing in Tuscan arts and crafts. And crucially, he had these strong connections to America, having traveled there for business since the 1920s.
So he had a foot in both worlds, Italian craftsmanship and American business savvy, kind of.
Exactly. And he was a key figure in Florence for the Allies after the war. A lot of American military personnel would buy local goods through him, providing a much-needed boost to the Florentine economy at the time.
Interesting. Okay, so how does this connect to fashion?
Well, it all kind of converged in 1951, February 12th, 1951 to be exact. Giorgini, he organized the first ever Italian high fashion show.
Very first. Wow. Where was it held?
Right in his family's ballroom. Can you imagine? Talk about making a statement. And his goal, along with the rising success of Gucci and Ferragamo, was to put Italian fashion on the world map.
It's kind of wild to think about now, but before that, Paris was like the undisputed fashion capital.
Oh, absolutely. It was like Italy was starting from scratch in terms of global recognition.
Like a total underdog.
Yeah, and there's this really telling anecdote. Even before color photography was widely used in Parisian fashion, photographers like Milton Green were already showcasing Italian models in their work.
Ah, that's interesting.
And in North America, there was already this growing interest in Italian designs, especially those creative capri scarves. They were really taking off.
So the seeds were there, even if Italy wasn't yet seen as the fashion destination.
Right, and get this. Our very own Alberto Scacchioni, who works at PD Uomo, the massive menswear fair in Florence. He had this crazy deja vu moment when he saw photos of those early Giorgini shows, the Sala Bianca events.
What do you mean? Like he felt like he had been there?
Well, it turns out his great-aunt, Germana Maricelli, was one of the designers Giorgini handpicked for those first shows. It was like history coming full circle for him.
Wow, that's a pretty incredible personal connection.
It is, and it speaks to just how pivotal those early shows were.
Okay, so Giorgini throws this first Italian fashion show. What happens next? Was it like instant success?
Not exactly. I mean, there was this rivalry, almost like a war of the tailors, as the press called it, between Italian and French fashion. And early on, Italian fashion was mostly, copying French styles.
Really? Like straight up imitation?
Yeah, some Italian fashion houses even got their hands on those paper patterns from Paris to recreate the looks for their Florentine clients.
So how did Italian fashion break out of that, that French shadow?
It's interesting, the post-war period, with all its challenges and shortages, actually forced Italian designers to get resourceful. And that necessity, it really sparked the development of a unique Italian style.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right? I think about Guccio Gucci. In 1947, with leather being scarce, he famously started using bamboo for handbag handles.
Yeah, it was practical, affordable,
Yeah.
and it ended up becoming this instantly recognizable Gucci signature.
Like an icon of Italian design.
Exactly. And Salvatore Ferragamo, he faced similar limitations. Leather was in short supply, so he got super inventive using straw, hemp, cork for his shoe designs.
Huh. So those materials weren't just stylistic choices, they were born out of necessity.
As a perfect example of that Italian talent for marrying material knowledge with incredible craftsmanship. It became a defining feature of Italian fashion.
And Ferragamo wasn't just like making do, he was a true innovator. Over 350 patents to his name.
He was a visionary, and his design philosophy was all about this connection between the hand and the finished product.
Like a deep respect for the craft.
Exactly. Think of his invisible sandal, from 1947.
The one with the clear straps?
Yes. It was inspired by fishing lines, their strength, and almost invisible quality.
Wow, I never knew that.
Or his Kimo sandal, inspired by Japanese footwear and those new transparent materials that were emerging. He was constantly pushing boundaries.
And let's not forget his success in Hollywood, right? He opened a store there way back in 1923.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the glamour factor. People loved his shoes because they fit impeccably. Even when he returned to Italy in 1927, those Hollywood connections stayed strong. You'd see actresses wearing his creations all over the silver screen.
It's amazing how those early experiences shaped his designs and his career. So going back to Giorgini, he wasn't a designer, but he seems to have had this incredible intuition for the business side of fashion.
He did, and those early trips to America, they gave him a real understanding of the American market.
Which was key, right? Because he saw the potential for Italian fashion to appeal to American consumers.
Absolutely. He observed this rising affluent middle class in America, more and more women entering the workforce.
So a growing demand for, like, stylish but practical clothes.
Right, and French haute couture, with its focus on custom-made, very expensive pieces, wasn't really catering to that need.
So there was a gap in the market, and Giorgini saw the opportunity for Italian ready-to-wear to fill it.
Exactly. And it's interesting, around the same time, Ferragamo was starting to get recognized in the U.S. He even won an award in 1947 for his invisible sandals.
Oh, wow, alongside a French designer.
Sources suggest it might have been Dior himself, planting the seeds for a potential collaboration later on.
A collaboration between Ferragamo and Dior? That would have been incredible.
They actually did discuss the idea of creating an international fashion center in Palazzo Spini-Ferroni, Ferragamo's headquarters, in 1949.
Wow, imagine that. A fashion powerhouse right there in the heart of Florence.
It's a shame it never came to fruition. But Giorgini, he had his own game-changing idea. Organized fashion shows featuring multiple Italian designers, all targeted at American buyers and the international press.
Smart. Instead of making buyers visit each designer individually, he brought them all together in one place.
Exactly. And those early shows, they were held right in his home salon with just a piano for accompaniment.
A far cry from the elaborate runway shows we see today.
It was much more intimate, more personal. And Giorgini was very deliberate about presenting this Italianness, this connection to Italian heritage.
Even in the invitations, right. He used a Renaissance portrait, Raphael's Lady with the Unicorn.
Yes. That imagery was so strategic, it linked Italian fashion to art, to tradition, to that rich history.
And the dress in the portrait, the colors, even subtly mirrored the Italian flag.
It was all about crafting a specific image, an entire aesthetic.
And those invitations, they were printed in English, directly targeting those international buyers.
It's amazing how much thought went into every detail. He even asked the Florentine women attending the final ball to wear only Italian-inspired outfits.
He was marketing a whole lifestyle, rooted in Italian culture.
It was brilliant, and you know what? It worked. Life magazine, a huge publication at the time, ran a feature celebrating the rise of Italian fashion, highlighting figures like Schubert, the Fontana sisters, Giorgini, Pucci, and Marcelli.
That must have been huge, getting that kind of international exposure.
It was a major turning point. And looking back, it's interesting to see how Italian design evolved from those early shows.
Like, how did it move beyond those initial influences?
Well, Alberto Scaccioni talked about how his great-aunt, Germana Marcelli, and other designers of that era, they started shifting away from formal evening wear toward more versatile, everyday fashion.
More practical, more wearable.
Exactly. Experimenting with different silhouettes, different fabrics, and that practicality, it became a hallmark of Italian style.
And Florence, with its rich history of craftsmanship, its saper-faire, as they say, it was the perfect breeding ground for that creativity.
Absolutely. And even today, Florence is a major training ground for international fashion talent. Schools like Polimoda are producing some of the world's leading designers.
And there's this whole ecosystem in Florence, right? Leather tanning in Santa Croce, jewelry and goldsmithing in Florence and Arezzo, leather goods production in Scandicci. It's like this incredible network of skill and tradition.
It's remarkable, and the future looks bright. We've got these emerging designers like Ian McDonald at Polimoda. He's focusing on refined sportswear. And Mariana Glini, she's innovating with laser-cut leather for embroidery.
So that mix of tradition and innovation, it's still going strong.
And let's not forget the Polymoda Library. It's a treasure trove, one of the largest fashion archives in Europe.
Amazing. And we also hear from Aurora Fiorentini, a fashion historian specializing in the 1950s.
Oh, yes, she's a fantastic resource.
She talked about these rare Bertolli hand-painted skirts and the vibrant boutique scene that was emerging in Florence at the time. It's like stepping back in time.
It really paints a vivid picture of the era. And it wasn't just women's fashion that was flourishing in Florence. It was also where men's fashion shows first took off.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Brioni, they were pioneers in that. They introduced innovative fabrics like silk for men's jackets.
Oh, that was a pretty big deal back then, right? Silk for men.
It was a bold move, and some of those early designs are just so iconic. Schubert's playful beach skirts with those big pom-poms, the capri pants, even the stylish raincoats were making their debut in Giorgini's Sala Bianca shows.
There was a real sense of fun and experimentation in those designs.
Absolutely. And moving those shows to the Sala Bianca in Palazzo Pitti in 1952, it gave them a whole new level of prestige. Giorgini was so smart, he used those stunning city backdrops for photo shoots. He created this aura of exclusivity around the events.
And there's that story about him awarding journalists in the Sala Bianca like a symbolic gesture of Italian fashion's global triumph.
It's a great anecdote. And the French press, they definitely took notice. They saw Italian fashion as a serious competitor.
And all of that led to real success in the American market, right? Ferragamo and Gucci opened stores in New York in the mid-1950s.
Their shoes and bags were first, then their clothing lines followed in the 1960s. It was a steady build, capitalizing on that existing American appreciation for Italian craftsmanship.
And 1961 was a big year for Giorgini. He held a major show in Philadelphia featuring 21 Italian fashion houses. By that point, Italian fashion had really established itself.
It had. And there were some key advantages that Italian fashion offered over the French haute couture.
Like, what made it stand out?
Functionality was a big one. Italian fashion was generally more practical, less heavily embellished than those expensive French designs.
So it was more accessible, more wearable for everyday life.
Exactly. And it was easier for American department stores to adapt and produce affordably, all while maintaining that high level of Italian craftsmanship.
So it was like the perfect blend of style, quality, and affordability.
And Giorgini, he understood that buying a Ferragamo bag or a pair of Gucci shoes, it wasn't just about the product, it was about buying a piece of Italy, a touch of that history and artistry.
So it was about selling a lifestyle, an experience.
Precisely. But you know, Giorgini wasn't the only driving force behind the success. Our sources make it clear that the U.S. government and American businesses played a significant role too.
How so?
American store owners, representing big names like Macy's, Magnin, Bonwit Teller, Tiffany, they were buying huge quantities of Italian goods.
So it wasn't just about fashion trends, there were political and economic forces at play as well.
Exactly. During the Cold War, supporting the Italian economy was part of a U.S. strategy to keep Italy firmly within the NATO alliance. It was a way to counter the influence of the Communist Party, which was quite strong in Italy at the time.
Wow, so made in Italy, it wasn't just about beautiful clothes, it was also about global politics and strategy.
It was a complex interplay of factors. But ultimately, Italian fashion became synonymous with this effortless elegance, this understated sophistication.
It's interesting, though, because today, many of those iconic Italian brands, like Ferragamo, are owned by French luxury conglomerates.
It is a bit ironic, isn't it? Although some, like Gucci, do still have family ties.
So in a way, that War of the Tailors has come full circle.
Perhaps. But in today's globalized fashion industry, ownership might be less about national identity and more about global reach and financial strength.
It's definitely a complex landscape, but it's amazing to think how far Italian fashion has come from those post-war beginnings to its global dominance today.
It really is. And it all started with those early pioneers, figures like Giorgini, Gucci, Ferragamo, their vision, their ingenuity, their determination to create something truly unique.
They laid the foundation for an entire industry.
They did. And we've uncovered some key takeaways, haven't we? The power of resourcefulness, the importance of recognizing market opportunities, and the enduring appeal of that unique Italian blend of artistry and functionality.
I think for our listeners who were curious about the origins of Italian fashion and wanted to get that deeper understanding, this deep dive has really delivered.
It has been a fascinating exploration, and it leaves us with a thought-provoking question. In this era of globalization and international ownership, what does the future hold for the identity of Made in Italy?
Right. Is it tied to its origin, to those traditional skills and craftsmanship, or is it something more fluid, something that can evolve and adapt while still retaining its essence?
It's a question worth pondering. Because Made in Italy, it's more than just a label, it's a story, a legacy, a testament to the enduring power of creativity and innovation.
And it's a story that's still being written.